MacArthur, so close but so far away. All right, what did we learn this weekend? Fire away, Craig.
Just in regards to college football or to Baylor?
Is anything in particular that pops out besides I've mentioned 2 or 3 specific teams and games?
I mean, you mentioned a lot of the big ones. I'd have to sit and actually think about, what all stood out to me. But, I mean, as far as Baylor goes, just a, bad performance at Stillwater. They did not show up ready to play. They did not show up ready to execute. They did not show up ready to fight. And I think they saw and showed maybe some elements of those things that I just mentioned as the game progressed late, but it was too little too late. And it was too little of an effort at times. It was too little of physicality at times. It was too little of execution at times. It was too little of a lot of things. And it was, interesting to hear Dave Aranda after the game. And, I think a lot of people, that performance was bad enough where it had a lot of people just, freaking out. As much as they did not play well, they had a chance to win that game, which is the most disappointing aspect of that loss, is that you were very much in that game if you just played a little bit better and are probably 5-0, but you didn't. So it's back to the drawing board, and I think everybody's calmed down now after about a day and a half since that ended, and realize there's a long way to go, long season to go. This team by no means, down and out or going to miss a bowl game or anything like that, but if they play like that, moving forward these next few weeks, then they definitely might miss a bowl game, and they definitely might be going home early, and that's the thing that they got to get back to, and that's what I expect Dave Aranda will get them back to.
If they blank the bet against West Virginia, very similar style game maybe than what they just had in Stillwater, they have Brigham Young and then Texas coming in after that, a bye week or an off week in between. Mike Terry, how about the Cincy Bearcats?
That was a very, very, very well played game.
$20 super chat. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
They controlled Notre Dame the whole time. I know Jack Cohn didn't play much, if at all, in that game. I did miss a good chunk of the first part of it where he might have played, but even with Notre Dame on a backup quarterback, that's a Notre Dame defense that considered itself to be pretty good and an offense that has playmakers, and Cincinnati was all over them all day long and making a case that if they continue this run, and unfortunately for Cincinnati, they don't get a mulligan. They will not get a mulligan. They don't get an oops, our quarterback was, had COVID, or we had to go 2 time zones, or, we were all sad because we watched The Notebook before the game, whatever excuse that Alabama could use if they had a loss. But Cincinnati, if they can go undefeated, they've made a case. And I would be interested to see if they do go undefeated and say SMU stays pretty good and stays ranked and down towards the end of the year when they beat them. If Cincinnati goes through all this with that quality win over Notre Dame and then the committee still says, nah, I'm curious to hear why they would say that. What do you have to do? Because if you look at a lot of teams that wind up in the playoffs, a lot of them don't have one more than a quality win like Notre Dame. No, some of them just have one.
There's nothing that Cincinnati could do other than just the schedule Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and run the table. I've had some of you also asking about Spencer Sanders. We'll get into that Oklahoma State quarterback as well. But it's a great win for Cincy. They did what they had to do.
Yeah, they did what they had to do, and Jack Cohn got benched. Okay. I mean, that's what happened with Jack Cohn. He got pulled at halftime, so he was dealing with an injury as well. But Notre Dame made that switch. So yeah, for anybody who didn't see that full game, that's what happened there. But yeah, Cincinnati, you've got to put them in the conversation. I mean, if that win doesn't wake up everybody out there, then what win will? Like you guys are saying. So they won that game convincingly. It was not in doubt. It was in doubt towards the end if Notre Dame was going to come back. But, as far as them having a lead, holding a lead, proving the lead, they did all those things. They were the better team. They were the better team on Saturday, and they deserved to win that football game. And so for as quick as we are to give praise to the Irish or to any of the other blue blood teams out there, the moment that they get a win or go on a little bit of a run, Cincinnati's not going to get that love, but they deserve that love. They deserve to be respected the same way the other teams surrounding them are. And the only reason that they're not is because the conference is next to their name, which is ridiculous because there's big conferences like the Pac-12 that absolutely suck, and yet they would get more of a respect nod than a Cincinnati would. And I think that's wrong because Cincinnati is clearly better than most of the teams out there right now.
Yeah, elitism makes you not in touch with reality. When you're all about, well, these conferences are better, this is better, if you just always have that excuse in the back of your head, well, Cincinnati beat Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame, clearly, they almost lost to a couple bad teams anyway, so now they're not Notre Dame. They've only lost one game, and they beat the tar out of an ACC school and a Big Ten school already. One was narrow, but they beat the tar out of Wisconsin, so
No,
Well, that elitist attitude. I mean, here's the thing: Notre Dame beat Cincinnati. That's a big win for Notre Dame. Like they wouldn't act like it was some sort of upset, but that would be some big notch on their resume if they would have beaten Cincinnati. It would have been a top 10 win and blah blah blah. Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, and it's like they still are fighting for respect, and that's the elites. We hear that all the time in college football with the haves and the have-nots. The elites, the haves, don't want there to ever be any more haves. They don't want Cincinnati to be a have. And that goes to our government. That goes to everything. There's always the people at the very top, right, that don't want everybody else joining their party. And when those people try to do that or those teams try to do that, there's a little bit of, well, no, you're not as legit as us. You don't have the same key to the door as we do, and we're not, they don't want that. So
it's like at a party where there's a couple in the corner. There's like 2 or 3 people, couples in the corner, and someone walks in, and they're like, what are they doing here? Like, it's kind of that look. There's so many of you on the chat room. Case Sumbry, been waiting all weekend. Go Pokes, Oklahoma State. I don't have the name in front of me about Spencer Sanders. He's going to drive you crazy, and yet he made a play on 3rd and 14 or 12, whatever it was, that put them in position to go for it and seal the game. But he did throw some bad picks, and that's kind of what he does. Oklahoma State has the week off. They have Texas in Austin in 2 weeks.
He's one of the most infuriating players to talk about. He really is, because he is so talented in so many ways, and yet he is like bound to throw some interceptions that keep Oklahoma State in a tougher game. It's amazing. But he's a really good player, and he did make some plays on Saturday night that ended up, leading them to a win. He also, as we mentioned, made some plays that allowed Baylor to stay in that football game. I mean, if he doesn't throw those 3 picks, Oklahoma State probably wins by 40. Maybe not that much, but, they win way bigger, and there's not a chance at the end of the game for Baylor to come up and try and, win it or tie it. He's good, but he's bad at the same time, and he's just good enough, and he was good enough Saturday.
I want to meet the coach who clearly in his youth told them that taking a sack means that goblins will attack you.
Yeah.
Because he won't take a sack. But part of the reason he throws picks is because he does not accept that not every play can work out. Well, it's better to fall down for a 2-yard loss.
Better. Or even 7-yard loss.
Yeah, than to rifle it straight. And the picks he throws are not... occasionally you throw a ball too hard, it bounces off somebody's hands. There's a pick, and
he airmails guys.
But he either airmails it, or you go, that guy has a yellow shirt. Yeah. Yours is orange.
Well, here he threw balls on Saturday that were so surprising to the defenders that, like, the moment they caught it, they couldn't even do anything. Yeah, they just fell down, and there's 3 picks, and all 3 could have been run back for touchdowns. All 3 of them.
Yeah.
Or at least big gains. And the only reason they weren't was because the guys caught it so awkwardly and then just fell on their faces, basically, because their balance was off. It was just, he's a good player. He'll win you a lot of games, but he'll also throw you out of some too.
C. Jenkins, 3-13. Texas is going to beat Oklahoma Saturday. Sooners will not be able to slow down Bijan Robinson, who looked really good. 30-something carries. I saw a stat. I believe Max Olson had this up on his Twitter feed that he had 9 carries in the 4th quarter. Bijan did 7 of them for first downs and 93 yards. And he's getting all sorts of awards coming to him this week as he earned. And they do look like they kind of got. They also forced a couple of key turnovers in that game. Wasn't easy, but Gary Patterson and right now TCU looking at up the hill right now with losses to open up Big 12 play. Well, open up the Big 12 play against Texas. They had lost to SMU the week before.
That'll be interesting to track because there's not a lot of defenses that let you run the football in the Big 12. We saw just one this past weekend with Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma, their defense is keeping them in a lot of games, so they'll be ready to play, I'm sure. I do lean Texas just based on the momentum and the way both teams have looked at this point, but we'll see how the rest of the week progresses as far as feelings like that go. But yeah, he's a stud. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if they're going to plan on giving him 30 carries every game, but if that's the way to win, then that's the way to win. And I'm curious to see him against a West Virginia, against an Oklahoma State, against an Iowa State, and some of these defenses that are very stingy against the run. That won't be the case against Baylor because they give up rushing yards like it's candy on Halloween. But him against some of these other defenses, that'll be a fun watch, and there'll be some times where they're going to be forced into having to win other ways, and they got a lot of weapons, so it'll be interesting.
Here's and last year, remember they had that classic 4 overtime silly game at the Cotton Bowl. Guys, if we trade UT and Oklahoma today for Brigham Young and Cincy, the conference actually improves. This is from Eric. that makes the Baylor loss on Saturday a little more palatable. Eric in Lubbock. If you look at the rankings, he's right. I mean, Oklahoma's ranked right behind Cincinnati, and Brigham Young ranked slightly ahead of Texas as well. Also,
but still, that's two teams that would be top 25 if they were in the Big 12 at this point in time, and that's what you hope for here in a couple years when they join the party officially. But yeah, that's great for them.
We're going to take calls. We've got a couple of comments from today's Dave Aranda media session on a couple of questions. You could tell at the end of the game Saturday night, they had the personal foul on linebacker Matt Jones that was just toxic in what happened there. He was very upset about it. He's been upset about it. He's been talking about it. And he said it's going to cost us a game. They were lucky that some of that did not come back to haunt them against Iowa State. We'll hear from them. And also, what's it like the day after a game when they had that kind of game? The offense was just not good, and the defense was gashed at times. He discusses that with the coaches in the room. Timothy, how about the rankings? Paul, the boring number 3 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. I wish my favorite team was boring.
I would give anything for boring. Armstrong can tell you because he's the only human being who witnessed it. But I was beside myself with joy because my favorite team beat Syracuse on a last-second field goal.
Yeah, I know. We both excited that we finally experienced it. That we don't need to talk about it. We talk about them too much, both of our teams.
But beating Syracuse is something you should celebrate in basketball.
No, in the tournament. Exactly, in the tournament.
Yeah, I was totally legit, and congrats on that with number 3 ranking. That's awesome to see them up there, see somebody different up there, and just hope they can hold on to it. I'd love to see some party crashers. I don't know that, Alabama and Georgia, they've almost got like an automatic berth already in the playoff, it feels like. But, as far as the best of the rest, Iowa's right there at the very top of that list and has an argument. And
obviously Penn State says, hey, don't forget about us. And Cincinnati said, hey, we're in the middle of this as well. All right, let's go to the calls. 254-339-1122. Our first guest, 345, Chip Towers of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on